Hello. So today we are going to be talking about historical romance novels and specifically a series within a series that were written for teen girls post American Girl dolls. It is a series I didn't know about, and it was written by my favorite children's author, and I kind of wanted to immortalize it. I think there's something kind of beautiful about immortalizing lost media by a writer who really changed my life. Just kind of had fun learning about it. I think historical fiction was really important to a lot of us growing up. I don't know about you. I also think it's kind of funny that in publishing, they realized there was this niche moneymaker thing pre-vampires and pre-dystopia. Maybe the historical novels were us getting ready for dystopia or like dystopian ooh, maybe that is my thesis. Please be nice. This is my first time doing this. I've done so many takes multiple times. I have not used the mic correctly. Part of the reason I am finally biting the bullet and recording this is because I really wanted to wear my Selkie dress again, and I actually haven't had as many opportunities as I would like to. So that is honestly a really big motivation for me. For 3 months, my life has revolved around not you. It has revolved around this book series. I just need someone to talk to about this or talk at about this, and if you don't mind, I would really appreciate it. Honestly, I've been putting off filming this because I really was trying to have this amazing thesis for this video. I wanted something about how every woman at one point just was like obsessed with historical novels. That's not exactly true, but I feel like more of us were than we realized. I know that there is this famous director who said that once cell phones existed, like in movies and stuff, there was all of a sudden this ex machina that could resolve all of these conflict issues and communication issues. So that's why so many still are made about like the pre-cell phone world, because in romance novels and romance films, we know so much of it is about miscommunication. And once cell phones are around, it's a little bit less interesting. Also, I feel like every girl, we were either a Titanic or a Romanoff or a horse girl. The Dear America series, we got to experience grief and suffering from the safety of those pre-distressed pages with that satin ribbon bookmark. I think there is something about being a young girl that makes us want to yearn and pine in a field and save our entire family from influenza. The American Dream series, not Dear America, but they were like the push-up bra of YA historical romance during the 90s. I didn't know it existed until this past Christmas when I was in this secondhand bookstore from my childhood that only accepts cash, and I saw the name Jean Ferris in the YA section, and I just got so excited because Jean, she was actually a huge influence and part of my childhood and also the past 2 years of my life. 2 years ago, I decided to adapt my favorite book from 4th grade into a screenplay. I can't figure out who has the rights, and I just want to let you know, adapting something you don't have the rights for is insane. I've been wanting to do a video essay book summary thing for a long time, and I thought it was kind of poetic. That first screenplay, she got me started, and then first video essay. I actually wanted to do a bodice ripper, but I never read one, and Jean's books were like barely had any words on them, and they were 170 pages each, but there's a lot of meat to it. So let's talk about, I guess, first, how the series came to be. The covers feature a beautiful red-headed heroine named Rosie. The character is actually half Portuguese and is describing as having quite dark hair, but we do all know about the redhead academic on YA book covers, Ella Enchanted most famously. Avon Publishing is under HarperCollins. They're known for like the Bridgerton, if you don't know. They weren't always doing just romance novels. They switched from doing other things to just romance in the 1990s. They actually published the first bodice ripper ever in 1972, The Flame and the Flower. Oh, what is the difference between historical romance and a bodice ripper? Amazing question. In historical romance, the spicy scenes happen once the door closes in the reader's face. Bodice rippers take us into the bedroom and then the door closes. Second context clue, bodice and bodice rippers. So they take place when bodices were worn, which is like the 18th and 19th century. So they can be ripped consensually, or sometimes it is a little bit more gray. They've been around for a while. Favorite settings are horses, castle, and boat. I would like to point out that a huge turning point for sci-fi came out around the same time. Dune in 1965. The Flame in the Flower by Kathleen E. Woodwis was in 1972, and that was a huge turning point in historical romance. So, boys, there is just as good of a chance of you being carried off by a smoldering duke and being ravaged under a waterfall as you have of becoming the Muad'Dib. I did try to figure out the parallels between the Vietnam War happening and then this like rise in escapism novels in the sci-fi and the historical romance space, but I couldn't figure it out and it was hard. My therapist did say it would help if I got like a doctorate in women's studies to at least figure out the flame and the flower bit, and that doesn't really sound that interesting, and also I would still be broke by the time I was done. I do think it's kind of interesting that the book of manners for women, they were being written during the 18th and 19th century, which is the time period that a lot of romance novels have been set. In these book of manners, they explain to women how to handle different social situations, such as turning down proposals, having a duel break out in your honor outside of the opera. Fanny Burney is a very famous author of these sorts of books, and she was also one of Jane Austen's main influences. I did read Cecilia in college by Fanny Burney, and I wouldn't say I really liked it, but I think I got the gist. Cecilia actually felt more Dickinson, but he wasn't writing until a century later. So I guess he just really liked Fanny Burney in the Book of Manners. So with these historical romances that were becoming popular in the 20th century, I think it is interesting that there's this parallel that women were, of course, using them to escape in the 20th century, but in some ways they were also being instructed, like a book of manners, on how to handle certain situations, sometimes in problematic ways, or also being introduced to concepts or just being reminded of the concepts of falling in love and communicating with your partner and just very novel ideas like that. So the American Dream series, there were 8 different authors that were tapped to write a historical novel set in the 1800s that covers a part of American history and stars a teen girl. Everyone except for Jean wrote 1 novel. Jean wrote 3, and I really think she wrote just one really, really, really long one, and they broke it up into 3 parts. 10 years later, she did actually do a reprint of these 3 books from the series. So that was in 2006 with a self-publisher called iUniversity. I don't really know how she got the rights back. Maybe the rights like ended or something after 10 years. I have the original copies because these covers are just like way cuter. Dear America series coming out the same year, 1996, as the American Dream. So I don't think they were like the inspiration for Avon to commission the American Dream series. However, the American Girl doll series had been around since 1985. And so I think the world was aware that young girls loved historical novels and they would buy books and toys about it. Kit's chicken feed sack dress and Felicity turning over her teacup are still completely burned into my. So by the time that the American Dreams and the Dear America series came out in 1996, there were actually 5 American Girl dolls, and those original readers were now ready for books where girls liked boys. I decided during the process of writing this that it didn't really seem fair to just read Jean's books and say that I kind of understood the gist of the American Dream series. So I did order the next most popular book in the series according to Goodreads, which is Plain Song for Caitlin. It took me a while to get past the first 40 pages, and then I did have quite a bit of fun. It's the mail order bride trope, which I learned existed from the inspiration for this video, which is Shitty Book Club and Montana State of Mind. Absolutely linking below, they're amazing. So reading Plain Song for Caitlin, it made me realize that Jean just went way harder writing her series than she needed to. I have so many notes written out for all of these books. And in Plain Song for Caitlin, Caitlin just goes with her sister, who is a mail order bride, to the plains. And Caitlin are the guys who fall in love at first sight immediately. The sister still marries him, dies in childbirth. Caitlin and the guy get together in the last few pages of the book. I read it in one coffee shop setting. Caitlin's sister is a weak and quiet-tempered woman named Rebecca, so I do understand I'm a little extra bitter about that. I thought it was fine, and I'm sure it was exactly what the publishers asked for. So I just wanted to say that, though, to just say, like, give the context for how hard Gina's about to go in these next 3 books. In her series, they go to different countries. She did research on a true historical figure and maps and love triangles, and there's an evil British sea captain, and there's a found family. There's a twin. A little bit about Jean. Her first novel was not published until she was in her mid-40s. She's remembered most for her young adult novels. I think that makes her stand out because she wasn't afraid of writing these quite serious topics for teens, covers contemplating unaliving oneself, questioning one's sexuality, and dealing with having emotionally unavailable parents. I haven't read all of her books, so I cannot vouch that she has covered each topic perfectly. But I can say that the books I have read seem to be full of empathy and trying to understand a perspective that is different from her own. Her voice is really distinct, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that she had been writing her entire life, and it was only in her mid-30s that she began to even try to become published. Her voice had just really honed in at that one point. She had probably gone through all of those phases that writers have in their teens and their 20s, where they try to write like their favorite authors until they finally are kind of able to discover their own voice. So when she passed away, which was in 2015, she was 76 and had written 21 books. I don't think anyone has ever done anything this extensive on Jean Ferris's works. Because she's had such a huge impact on my life, I think this could be a fun way to honor her, just immortalizing this book series that was important enough for her to republish 10 years later after somehow reacquiring the rights. All right, first book, Into the Wind. How many takes have I called it Into the Woods? Enough. The Into the Wind series begins in Yucatan, Mexico, which is a neutral port. We immediately have our main character, Rosie. Rosie's father owns the drop anchor and is a deadbeat. We do not like her dad. I don't even know if we learn his name. And then her mother is did. As all historical novels, you've got to have a deadbeat someone. You have to have a dead mom. She works at the drop anchor at night and just pretty much runs the whole thing for her father. It's full of rowdy sailors and she just hates her life. And then she also sews during the day for everyone, and no one's nice to her and no one understands her, and she just wants to have a house where she can sew, and she wants to take care of all the orphans in the entire world and adopt all the animals in the entire world. And she never wants to be with a man. She hates men. Boo. In Yucatan, there is a brothel led by La Senora, and Rosie does a lot of sewing for them during the day. Jean does emphasize that all of the girls are very nice. She does not want to be mistaken for a sex worker, which actually is quite common, I've learned, in bodice rippers. That absolutely happens in The Flame and the Flower. It seems to happen quite a bit. But she is nice about them in general, like, hey, those girls are pretty cool. But don't mistake her for one. She is 17. So she is on her way into La Senora's house, and then bam, second page, she runs into a man. Oh, who is this man? And she's immediately like, don't think I work here. And the clothes she sewed for the girls have gone strewn about, and she's very feisty, and she's like, pick those up. And he does. And he's like, what's your name? And she has this beautiful long Portuguese name, and I cannot say it all correctly. And instead of saying, and then he says, I'm Robert Leons. And you're like, okay. And she's like, I don't like him. In her head, she's like, ugh, I don't like this boy. He has golden hair and golden eyes, and I find him infuriating. With her transatlantic, she's like, I find him so annoying. I don't like him at all. He, instead of calling her name, which is Rosalia, he calls her Nettles, which I thought giving her a nickname immediately was very cute. And my therapist would call that negging. So maybe not very cute. She gets to La Senora's house, where she is actually informed he has a nickname as well. It's called Raider, which I feel like is very like night court of him to have a nickname named Raider. You think that later on maybe like she's going to be referring to him as Robert because she really knows him. Spoiler alert, I don't really think ever referred to as Robert again. Like, everyone is going to call him Raider. Just know that. So she's now leaving La Senora's, and she comes across a dead mother cat and the dead kittens, and she's like, no. And then she realizes one of the kittens is still alive, so she's like, I gotta rescue this kitten. Now we're cutting to the drop anchor. The night has begun. There's rum. There's just dirty men, and there's not a single good one in the entire world, not even her father. We meet Captain Lawrence. He's a British sea captain who's known for tricking people. Like, Lawrence will fly the white flag to surrender, and then the other ship goes, and then he kills everyone and drowns them. And then, or he'll make his ship look like it's abandoned, and then they'll go to it. It's called the Lightning. And then the other ship will go to the Lightning, and he's tricked them, and he's going to drown all of them. So I would just say, I think everyone needs to stop going to the Lightning. I think he's always got a trick, and he's probably going to drown everyone. And everyone should be on their best behavior here because it is a neutral port. But of course, these are boys, and boys got to fight. A bad man, grabs Rosie, and she's like, no, let me go. Let me go. And then Raider's there. For some reason, he's never come into the drop anchor before. Maybe he's never come to Yucatan before, but he seems to be everywhere, so I don't know how that's possible. Raider's like, stop that. Don't you dare touch her. And he grabs her protectively. And he smells really good. But Rosie doesn't care that he smells really good. And then the guy's like, no, you embarrassed me. I have a fragile ego, and I'm gonna stab you. And Raider's like, no, and he's got a gun. Good. he's got a gun and he fires the gun, and then just all chaos breaks loose, and then someone knocks over a lantern and all of Drop Anchor lights on fire because remember there's rum everywhere. And Raider's like, I'm going to rescue you now. And she's like, no, I have a kitten upstairs and I have a locket. And I'm gonna go get those two things. And he's like, you're silly. You're a silly girl. And I would like to speak up for the Rosie. I actually have a cat named Rosie, so it feels even more serendipitous. And I have another cat named Judy, Dame Judy Dench. I would run into a burning building for those animals. I know she just met that kitten, but it is her child. And in the locket, her mother's locket, there is a secret key. But whatever. So, anyways, they go up to the bedroom. Ritter's like, "Oh, you silly girl," you know. And there's like, and the plane, the fire, like, and then he's like, "I'm gonna throw you out this window. I'm gonna like save you." And he does. So she gets out of the window. She turns back, and the Drop Anchor, it's just on fire. And she's like, "What about my dad?" And he's like, "What?" Oh, yeah. He sends Nicodemus McNair to go back in search for her father. I'm sure he'll be fine, though. I'm sure it's going to be fine. She is left on the beach, and Raider is like, oh, yeah, your dad. He goes back into the burning building to try to go find her father. She's on the beach, terrified. Oh, and Raider has her kitten in his pocket. That's an important piece of information. And he's like, wait here. And then a figure is approaching her, and she's just like, I've got to run away. I'm freaking out. And she immediately had forgotten that he told her to wait there. And he grabs her and he just smells good. And Raider's like, I shot your dad. I'm so sorry. I shot him. And he doesn't really seem that sorry. And she doesn't really seem that sad either. But she's like, no, no, papa. So that's a bummer. Her home is gone. She just has her kitten and her locket that has a key inside. So who cares? We're now about to discover his main personality trait, which is like evening the score. It's like I did something wrong and then I've now got to even it out. Like this is going to come up a lot. It's his main personality trait. So he's like, I shot your dad. So now I've got to even the score and make sure you don't die from your burn wound. So I'm going to take you onto a pirate ship. And she's like, I'm not going. And this man does know women because he's like, I've got your kitten in my pocket and you can't have it back unless you come with me onto this boat. And she's like, what am I gonna do? I gotta have back my kitten, you know? And so she goes with him. Why am I talking like this? So she goes with him onto the pirate ship, and it's called the Lady Ship, which we love. We love a feminist ship. It's captained by Captain Octavia. And I want y'all to I was kind of imagining like Diana Agron, like just she's the whole time is just like described as perfect and just kind of icy, but like in a contained way. Like she's not mean, but everyone's like, "Ugh, she's perfect, you know? And it feels very I've never seen Glee, but like from what I've collected, it feels very her. We meet Baptiste. He is very friendly and has a lot of muscles. Raider brings her onto the ship, and Octavia and Raider are saying goodbye. He's like, I'm leaving this girl here. And Octavia's just gonna go with anything Raider says. So they're like murmuring and like hugging, and they're both like, I wish this could all end. I wish, yes, oh, I want it to be over soon, you know? And you're like, over what? And then Raider's walking away, and then he's like, you know what? And he comes back, and in my head, he like dips her, you know, he dips Rosie, and she's never been kissed, and he kisses her, and she says it feels like a revelation, which I think is really sweet, actually. I think a kiss being described as a revelation is very cute. And I do think that is something about Jean is she's not just writing a romance, but like I think it's kind of Rosie discovering her sexuality, which Rosie is 17. But if she's been surrounded by gross, dirty men her entire life, I think this handsome captain, I'm not really surprised that this is her kind of awakening. She does have a thought at one point after he leaves. This is like all she can think about for like most of the book. And she's like, do I like kissing Raider or do I like kissing? And then she's like, should I kiss Baptiste? Will I feel the same? And honestly, I think that's very sweet, and I think that's honestly a very valid question. All right, so now we're going to meet Tootie. Tootie is Cajun, and she's described as having dark hands. Batiste is described as having dark hands, and there were a lot of Haitian refugees in Louisiana, which we're going to find out later is kind of where this whole team was assembled. And now Tootie, as most older, wise women are, but yeah, we get a lot of context from her, which it turns out Raider was sailing around. He's just a sailing around boy, and he had a twin. And one day, Captain Lawrence attacked the ship, and Raider was injured, and his twin was kidnapped. And Raider's like, no, because they were made to sail around because in Raider's hometown, he was just kind of a slut. And his dad was like, no, go get on a ship with boys. So stop that. And so the twin had to go too, because he was a twin, had to go everywhere. And now Raider needs to find his twin. So that's like what they were trying to do. I think he was working in trading, but then he was a pirate. And then once privateering became a thing, then he became a privateer, which is pretty much just being a legal pirate. So it's just kind of like, hey, I've got this piece of paper that says, in the name of my country, I can take all of your stuff. So then he became a privateer. Is nowhere in her dreams did Rosie imagine sailing the high seas on a pirate ship. I guess because this is about the history of America, we're sort of supposed to learn about privateering, which makes sense, but obviously we're going to call it pirating. There's a term called impressed, and it's not like impressed. Impressed is when British ships would go onto American ships and steal sailors, and then they were kind of like British would just be like, you're our sailors now, and made to row the boats, and they're like, no, you're British. And the Americans are like, no. So that's what was happened. Well, that's what happened is Raider's brother was kidnapped, and he was impressed, not impressed. He was impressed to by Captain Lawrence, and Raider has been sailing the seas because he has to even it out. He has to make it even. All right, so Tootie has tended to her wounds, and Rosie falls asleep. And then she wakes up, and the ladyship, duh, it's set sail. And Rosie goes to Octavia, and she's like, no, 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 I have to go back. I have to go back, even though there's nothing for me there. Take. And Octavia's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Rosie now has to now it's all very boat. It's all very boat coded. She learns how to climb rigging and wear pants and have fun. And then there's a makeover montage where Tootie's like, you need a haircut. And Rosie's like, really? Me? Mm-mm. I'm ugly. And Tootie's like, no, I'm going to give you a haircut. And then after the haircut, everyone is just but I will say Princess Diaries has taught us that truly hair is everything. At this point, we are on page 100. And in my notes, I just wrote, Batiste does something very sexy. So I was like, oh, I should check in on this. So the lady ship has been attacked by another ship. And one of the pirates on the other ship is trying to get Rosie, and also trying, no, I think he's going after Barnaby, who just imagine Gavroche from Les Mis. He's like, I I'm a small boy, but I'm sassy and I can take care of myself. And you're like, oh my gosh, oh, I've got to save him, you know? So, anyways, she climbs up the ropes, the rigging or whatever. Her wrists get tangled into the ropes because she's trying not to fall. And she like wraps it, and her hands are going to end up getting really scarred, which is actually going to come up a lot in the book. And then here's the sexy part, which I do think for a woman who just discovered maybe she's not asexual, like yesterday, I think this is a lot to take in. Afterward, she hardly remembered the descent. Only her gratitude to Baptiste, strong Baptiste, was with her, supporting her, guiding her, murmuring to her in a language she couldn't understand. Guessing it's French. She was going to have to revise her opinion of pirates. Nowhere in her categories of fool, cad, or criminal could she accommodate this man. She like has these like, her wrists, they're really hurt. Tootie, they go back to like the room and Tootie's tending to her wounds and it's like, "Oh my gosh, you're so brave." And then Tootie gives the talk to Rosie and Tootie's like, "Listen, I know that you've only learned the worst thing about men. I know that like you really feel like there is like no reason you should trust them, but one day, I don't know if you've met anyone. I don't know. One day you're going to meet a very special pirate, I mean, boy, and you might want to kiss him. You might want to kiss him a little bit, and that's okay." I don't know. I think it's like a very mature conversation, and it goes on for a while about male and female relationships. I feel like it was just very Jean, like plain song for Caitlin could never. It's a really important scene for Rosie, and I don't really think she's ever had kind of that like maternal kind of moment with someone, which I think is very cool and sweet that Jean wanted to discuss, which is pretty much like why it's really hard, really, really hard to trust men. Um, and maybe be open to one, but I understand why it would be challenging to do so. But make sure that they're like worthy of it, which I think is great. Then the ladyship comes across bum 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 the lightning with Captain Lawrence. And there are dead bodies spread around the top of the ship, and they're like, hmm, hmm, should should we go on? Should we go on? Why is everyone dead? Huh. And they do. They decide to go on, and Rosie's like, "Can I go on?" And they're like, okay. And so they all go onto the lightning, or a lot of them do. And then, fa fa, like, they weren't dead. Surprise! Everyone is captured. And I know we're supposed to think like very serious, but I just can't stop thinking about Peter Pan during the scene, where like all the lost boys are captured by the pirates. That's what I'm imagining. And Captain Lawrence is like, you got a haircut. You got a haircut. And I really like you now. I'm going to take you, and he's like, "I will release your friends if you come and stay with me and be my lady friend." And she's like, "Let my friends go." So they all leave and they're like, I wish there was a little bit more of a fight. Captain Lawrence is like, "I'm gonna kiss ya and stuff." And she's like, "Never." And he's like, "You know what? I want you to like, yes. No, I'm locking you up. I'm locking you up until you decide you're gonna give me what I want." And Rosie's like, "Well, that's gonna be never." And she's locked in like the dungeon of the ship. It's like gross and it's dirty and it's dark. And there are two American sailors under. One is like about to die, and one is this like guy covered in dirt and long hair and long beard. She can't really see him, and it's dark. And the first guy dies, and it's very sad. And the one that's alive with the greasy face that we can't see, his name is Rip, which is a very stupid name. But I guess if you're chained up in the dungeon of a ship, you can ask to be called whatever you would like. But Rip also is up there with one of my favorite characters. He's really sweet. A detail that like never comes up in books and novels is toilet. And she's always like, he always is like really polite and respectful. And it's really embarrassing when I have to, which I know is like really stupid, but I feel like that's very Jean to be like, I'm going to bring up toilet. He tells her a story about like golden spiders. Um, I don't know, but you just need to know we talked about golden spiders. I can't really remember the point. I think it was to make her less scared of spiders. And then they'll like check on her from time to time and be like, be with uh Cap- Captain Lawrence is like, be with me, be my girlfriend. And Rosie's like, no, no, I won't be your girlfriend. And finally one day he's like, you will be my girlfriend. And he drags her up to his room. And at this point, she's just filthy. You know, her clothes are dirty. She's dirty. And he's like, listen, we're docked somewhere. I'm going off the ship for a minute. And I have a bath, like a hot bath. And then I have like courtesan clothes, probably not dissimilar to what I'm wearing right now. And I have these frilly beautiful low cut I have this really beautiful low cut dress here for you, and you will put it on when I return. And she's just looking at that bath and she's like, I really want to take a bath. But I won't. And then she's like, well, actually, if I take the bath and then put back on my dirty clothes, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to take a bath and then I'll put back on, I won't put on the low cut dress. I'll only put on my dirty clothes. And then she's out of the bath and she's like, I kind of want to see what the low cut dress looks like on me. I kind of just want to see, you know, when you like see a low cut dress and you just want to see. So she puts it on. She puts it on. And then there's like the door and it's, you know, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's Captain Lawrence. And it's not. Who is it? Who do we think it is? It's Raider and Nicodemus McNair. Nar. So they've come back and you really are like you're reading this book, the first one, and you're like, where's Raider and Nicodemus McNair? And it turns out that like this just proves my point, I think, that this was meant to be one book. So it's Raider and Nicodemus McNair, and he sees her dressed like Captain Lawrence's girlfriend and that low cut top, and Raider is just like, ugh. He's just his feet. I would like to point out men need to understand that sometimes their feelings are hurt. He thinks he's like angry because she's this bad person, but I think deep down, I think Raider's feelings were hurt because I think he's like, man, Captain Lawrence, he like kidnapped my brother and you're his girlfriend now. It really hurts my feelings. And instead, he's like, God, you suck. You know, his feelings were hurt. Raider. Anyway, so he like drags her up and he's like, come on, we're fleeing. We're fleeing out of here. And she's like, oh my gosh, Raider, the nicest guy is down in the ship dungeon. We should get him. And he's like, do you think it's my brother? And she's like, oh, I did tell him that I had a friend named Leon who was looking for him. And he said that guy needs to give up. And that's not me. And so Raider's like, well, then I'm not. down to rescue him. And Rosie's like, okay, I need to stop blowing air. And there's like a fighting, fight. So then they're on the ship and there's like sword. They jump off, they get in their little boat and they're sailing away and they're going towards Raider's ship, which is called the, what's his main personality trait? Everything being fair. It's called the Avenger. The Avenger. Nick is like, Nicodemus McNair is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? You're covered in like, looks like you got stabbed. And Raider's like, I'm fine, except for this really big one. And then it cuts off there. Once again, it's not that this is a bad ending to a book. It's just the next one that we're about to discuss picks up exactly right there. And honestly, the words are so big. I mean, I think they're the same size. They're the same size as Plain Song for Caitlin. But this is kind of the length of like a bodice ripper. Let me see, is it the same? Oh my gosh. No, the font's the same size. So that is the first. That is the first Into the Wind, which was kind of Raider light. And that's okay because we're about to get a lot of Raider from now on. Okay, so at this point, I am in the editing process, and what you've just seen is the first day of filming. Right after this, I received an unfortunate phone call. It left me pretty upset, and I called one of my best friends after, and she encouraged me, like, keep going. You've been working towards this. Go ahead and record book 2 and 3. And I did, and I'm proud of myself, but I just knew I could do better, I guess. In the video, maybe no one would have known it but me, but I just didn't want to like watch back me covering book 2 and 3 with like you could tell I had like cried off some of my mascara. I just looked a little bit more tired, and I didn't want to watch that back. I knew I could do better, and so I gave myself a week and I recorded what you're about to see. And I was like, wow, that went really well. Maybe it went too well though, because I am editing the video and I keep blowing out my mic. And I was just like, no. I cannot go back and re-record this a third time, because I'm already someone who can get caught in a perfection loop. Working on this series, I now have $100 fine from my local library because I was so sick of reading after working on this that I had 2 very popular books and I would refuse to return them. But also I can't bring myself to read right now because I've reread these books so many times. So now I owe the library $100. I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to re-record it again, but I'm blowing out the mic. And then I saw the title for a YouTube video. J.W. Anderson, was the head designer of Loewe. He actually just retired. And there's this interview with him laying on a couch, having an interview with Bella Freud, and the title said "The Importance of Imperfections" or something like that. And he worked on the movie Challengers. He did the costuming, and I just read that and immediately I was like, yeah, The importance of imperfect. Okay, cool. I won't re-record it. I think by imperfections, I never finished watching the video. But I'm sure by imperfections he more meant like fabric being slightly discolored, or like he thought the zipper was going to be on the front but it was in the back, and then he like starts a new fashion revolution. I don't know what he does actually say in this interview, but I felt like that was a good enough sign to just push forward. But I'm very sorry about the audio. But as we know now, J.W. Anderson, The Importance of Imperfections. Oh, also, I wanted to address that is not a picture of Donald Trump. A guy once messaged me on Hinge and asked if it was. That's actually Philip Seymour Hoffman, who I feel like would have loved J.W. Anderson's video of The Importance of Imperfections. And yeah, I just have pictures of people I don't know in my apartment. I think it's kind of fun. And I did mean to clarify that that is not Donald Trump. That is my favorite actor, actually. So we're about to carry on. I just wanted to address kind of what's happening. And I know you're thinking, Rebecca, why the did you not use this mic, earlier? But actually, I've been lying to all of you. I'm still using my little shitty mic. All right. Let's go back into American Dreams. Let's see what Raider and Rosie are up to. Once again, I'm sorry I get very excited. As I explain these two, I'm very passionate. And for the next video, I will find a way to handle not blowing out my mic, so I don't lose my mind. I also did a costume change this time. Rosie was like perfumed in courtesan clothing. I kind of felt like this is what a boy of that time would think courtesan clothing is. Like, this is what Captain Lawrence would have been like, oh yeah, like my low cut top. I think Raider seeing this and he would be like, ugh, you courtesan. So I thought I should put on my bridesmaid's dress from the late 1960s for funsies. Why not? All right, so let's dive in. Let's dive in to book 2. I don't know what it's called. Song of the Sea. Ooh, Raider does like hear music and he hears the sea. Song of the Sea for, I would say, about 70 pages. Raider's mostly unconscious, which I think is fun because that means for most of the like 70 or so pages, it's a lot of Rosie like pining. Well, let's set the scene. Let's set the scene. We are picking up exactly where book 1 ends, which means Nicodemus McNair and Raider are like sailing to the Avenger. They get to the Avenger. Rosie goes up and she like turns. She turns, and Raider's like limp body is being like drug, like hoisted by his sailors. All of a sudden, he goes from like mighty hero to unconscious man. And Nicodemus McNair and Rosie are taking shifts, like watching him. And at one point, um, Raider awakens. Men, if you ever almost die and then you awaken, the first thing you need to do is tell the woman, I'm dead. I must be in heaven, for you are an angel. Girls love it. Girls are going to eat that up. This is the 3rd book of Jean Ferris's where this happened. So he wakes up and he's like, I'm in a dream. I'm dead. And Rosie's like, you're not dead. It's just me. and she loves it. And she's been like watching him sleep and like, what would it be like to caress his face? Remember when we kissed that one time? She's like thinking about it. She like helps him up so he can like eat soup or I actually think it's rum, and he's like, tell me a story. On her locket is a like a deer and an apple, so she tells him this like fairy tale that she doesn't remember ever being told, but it comes up of a man getting an apple from a deer, and then the deer says, all your wishes will come true now. I promise this is important. He gets a princess and a castle, and then an old man steals the apple, and he steals the apple, and then all the wishes uncome true. So then the man has to like find a cat and get the rat king to promise to help him get the apple back, and then they get the apple back, and all as before becomes true once again. And Raider is like, I'm that's me. That's me. I also would need to get the apple back to make my dreams come back true, and I get that guy. And then he passes out, and then there's like a ship, there's a storm on the ship, and she's like pinning her body like against him so he doesn't fall. And the whole time Nicodemus McNair like, "Ugh, ugh," you know, and not feeling super confident that Raider's not gonna die. They get to the island. It's called the Cove. And the Cove is like Octavia and Raider's like special place. It's their little hangout where like their two teams of sailors like live, and it's kind of their vacation home, I guess. And then Tootie's there, and Tootie's taking care of him. And Tootie's like, don't blame yourself. He chose to do this. He chose to try to save you, even though he don't know why. So she's doing like watch, and she like likes to like watch him sleep. And then he like stirs, he like stirs, and and it's like, you're an angel. Well, what do I know? You're in my dreams. And he's like, I felt your cool hand touching my face. And she's like, you don't know that. And he's like, yeah, I do. Now he's like back, Raider's back. And in true Raider fashion, he's just gonna say some, and I love it. Now we're getting a shift in perspective. I was rereading this book yesterday, and I thought this was the first time we heard Raider's thoughts. It's actually, there's one time before, and now we're getting his thoughts again. I really like this paragraph. Maybe I'm losing my mind, y'all. I think it's a really good paragraph. Let's just read it, okay? So they're covering the fact that Raider thought that Rosie was this is my cat Rosie, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. This is my cat Rosie. I didn't name her after the book. I just had a lot in my mind and it seemed like a good name. She hates when I talk. So Rosie's explaining her side of the story. She's like, I wasn't being his girlfriend in my low cut top. I was really dirty. He had offered me bath, he had offered me clothes, and I did it. And Raider was like, I get it, actually. And he apologizes, which we love. He like immediately wakes up, he apologizes. That's fun. Now it's his perspective. As he said the words, he remembered the murderous spurt of rage he'd felt when he opened the door in Lawrence's cabin and found her there, sweet and perfumed in courtesan's clothing, like this. Through his black wrath, he'd reminded himself that she was only a tavern wench who undoubtedly been with men far less appealing than Lawrence. But woven through that thought, like a silver fish through a stormy sea, was the memory of her guileless, flustered kiss the night of the tavern fire, and his certainty that it was her first. The relief he felt at her explanation for her presence in Lawrence's cabin was as baffling as the anger he'd felt on finding her there to begin with. I don't know why, We have a theme. I especially like the part about the silver fish. But maybe I'm just heavily biased. Maybe I just love Jean. Maybe y'all are like, Rebecca, that's in every kind of book like this silver fish, that's such a cliche. I had to remind myself in the notes at this point on why they couldn't be together, because this whole time they're like talking and pining and being like, we shouldn't kiss. We shouldn't kiss. And I'm like, wait, why are they not kissing? I can't remember. And then I remembered everything has to be even for Raider and his brother. And Raider is just like, no, I have to stay dead inside. I have to find my brother. I cannot let myself be distracted. And I think he just kind of hates himself. So that's sad. It's all about Octavia for Rosie. For one, it's like, who am I? She's Diana Agron. She's perfect. And also like maybe she kind of understands he's attracted to her, but she's just like, I can't do that to Octavia. I can't. I really can't. I understand that, but that's a lot of thinking about Octavia, considering the fact she's not really around that much. I don't know, but that is the reason. And I'm reminding us team that there is a reason on why she thinks this cannot happen. And now that Raider is awake, Rosie is going to do this very Rosie thing that you'll all have to get used to. Rosie's going to ignore Raider. She stays in her bedroom for days and she embroiders and she hangs out with her cat, who is now called Middy. And then she'll go down to the sand and will collect shells. And at one point, Tootie comes to the bedroom to like bleach her skin with lemons. And Rosie's like, I don't care. I don't care if I'm burnt. I don't like I can't focus on boys. I won't care if they don't think I'm fair-skinned anymore. And Tootie's like, no, I think you're gonna care about boys. So she's bleaching her skin with lemons, and Rosie just kind of says out of nowhere, I need to get back to England to live with my aunt. I think we've heard the aunt mentioned in England like once. And I do want to remind you guys at this point, we have not been in America yet. So, what I've been thinking about this past week, and it's kind of wild that I just realized this, all of the American Dreams covers have a white girl on them, which is interesting because there were a lot of girls in America with dreams at that point. Just, I think that should be acknowledged. We're going to England, once again, not going to America with our dreams. And she's like, I'm gonna go stay with my aunt, my dad's sister. I think she's either never met her or only knew her as a, no, I think she only knew her as like a 4-year-old at the oldest. But she's like, I've got to go back. And Tootie's like, okay. Okay. And it's like Octavia's leaving. You need to come down to dinner. And Rosie's like, no, I've got to go with Octavia. I can't be around Raider. And Octavia's like, you've got to stay here. We're now going to go into Rosie ignoring Raider more. One of my favorite moments in the entire series is about to happen. I love it because I feel like it's very me coded. Rosie is watching Raider and Octavia go down to the beach, and she sees them in an embrace, like a hug, a comforting hug. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. She's in a nightgown, which I think is very important. She's in a nightgown, sees him on like the veranda or something, and she, in her like sadness, beats her fist against a pillar. I love that. I too have wanted to beat my fist against a pillar in a beautiful nightgown. It's like, of course, who walks up behind her? It's Raider. And he's like, I can't sleep on full moon nights. I can hear moonlight. And I'm like, that's excellent. That's excellent writing, Jean. And he's like, let's go down to the beach. And she's like, I shouldn't go. I'm going to go. They're both drunk on the moonlight and they start kissing. And at this point, it's getting fun in the sand. I guess they've kissed in the bedroom at this point, and then now they're kissing in the sand. And she's like, you know what? I want to do this. This is fun for me. I'm going to. At one point, and she's like, what am I doing? I can't do this to Octavia. This is not okay. So she's like, no. And she pushes him off. And then he realizes, he's like, no, I have to find my twin. I can't kiss her and find my twin. It's not going to work. So Rosie goes back to the house, and as she's walking past, she sees Batiste coming out of Octavia's bedroom. And I'm like, okay, challengers, it's a fun time. Good for her. So the day after, she's going down to the kitchen and she's like, to the cook, his name is Frank. She's like, Frank, make me a picnic basket. And he's doing it and he's like, stay away from Raider. And then Frank drops like, Raider killed your dad on purpose. And you're like, okay. And that, like, I don't know, it's just a random drop. And then Raider shows up and he's like, huh, where have you been? And she says, I love this. I hadn't slept well the night before. And then he says, nor I. I had something on my mind. And you? And then she says, it wasn't my mind that was bothering me. In fact, I was feeling sick to my stomach. And then he says, a pity. He said, looking into her eyes again. I saw no signs of that earlier in the evening. And then she says, it came on suddenly, but I'm sure I shan't be troubled by it again. I've discovered a fine cure. And it is? Rosie was conscious of the closing attention, avoidance of that which made me ill. And then Rader says, sometimes one can learn to tolerate the offending substance by taking it in increasingly large doses. Jane. So she goes up to her bedroom, and then Rader comes up and he's like, I think we should be friends. Let's just be friends. And they go on a picnic, but they go on a friend picnic, which is the same as a romantic picnic, except they're friends. And that doesn't work at all. They try to be friends for about 6 pages, and they end up making out in the sand again. Then once again, she's like, what are we doing? No, what about Octavia? And then he's like, no, my twin. I have to find my twin. They sail to England, which is like a month's journey. He's taking a month to take her to England. And this is like me realizing that I kind of like, I skipped some. Backtrack. So they make out in the sand. She's like, no, we can't do this. And then comes this like side adventure where I think Jean is showing off that she studied history for this. They see a ship, and Raider's like, we need to figure out who's on that ship. And it's Jean Lafitte. So Jean Lafitte, and he is a flirty man, and he's a real pirate. He was like known for being a pirate and kind of this like scoundrel. He was a part of different wars. I in the book, he's portrayed as very like flirty and harmless, and then if you actually look up his history, because I did quite a bit of reading about him, he wasn't. So he flirts with her a lot. Raider gets jealous a lot. Rosie kind of likes that and plays into it. He's very French. She says a lot of French things. She's like, why is it like he's almost as handsome as Raider, but then like they have the same job. They're both really confident. why do I like Raider? And then she's like, there's this like softer side of him. There's this softer side of him that only I can see, which girls, this is very 17 of her, that there is just don't, unless you're in American Dreams, and then just go for it. She finds out that Raider is planning on taking her to England. I guess Tootie told um told Raider that that's what she wants to do. So he's like, "By the way, we're sailing to England." And she's like, "Oh, he hates me. He hates me. That's why he wants to get rid of me." Even though she's hiding in her bedroom constantly. So clearly he like is getting all the vibes that she hates her, or he hates her. No, he's getting the vibes that she hates him. That's what I'm trying to say. Jean Lafitte teaches her how to shoot a gun. He flirts with her a lot. Jean Lafitte makes a really good point. He's like, hey, y'all are about to sail for a month to England. Y'all should do a test run. They've been working on the ship. Y'all should do a test run. We should go to the Isla de Oro. And it's apparently like Disney World for pirates. So Rosie's like, sure. And they go to the island and she's like, oh my gosh, this is also scandalous. So she's like, let's go to a restaurant. I just want to sit in a restaurant and I want to people watch. And he's like, sure. And I think we all need to know that Jean Lafitte is messy. He's a messy, messy man. And guess who comes in? We only know about a handful of characters, so I feel like y'all can all guess. It is Captain Lawrence. And she's like, I gotta get out of here. And Jean Lafitte is like, let's stay. This is obviously the next chapter in our life, and we must stay for it and be present. And she's like, no, I really want to go, which I think is super understandable. But then guess who walks in too? It's Raider. It's Raider. So, like, immediately, Raider and Captain Lawrence start like fighting. And then Lawrence pulls out a knife. And then Rosie's like, I have a gun, which she does have a gun. She puts it to Lawrence's head. And they're like, where is his twin? And Lawrence is like, I'll never tell you. You'll have to kill me before I tell you, and I do know where he is. And this is where you deeply understand that we're 2/3 of the way through the second book. It would be very anticlimactic if we immediately knew. And Raider and Jean Lafitte are like, sounds like he's not going to tell us. We'll let him go. So they go to the ship. They go back. She says goodbye to Lafitte, which I'm kind of fine with. As a device to make things happen, it's fine. But he does, like, kind of annoy me. And knowing his history, I'm not his biggest fan. They start sailing to England. And the whole time, Rosie does what Rosie's going to do, which is ignore Raider. And Raider ignores her too. And once they're approaching the island, she's like, we're at war. We're at war with England. How are we going to do this? And Raider's like, don't worry, I have a plan. We're about to get like some lore. At one point, the Revenger had attacked a pirate ship, and in the pirate ship were all of these jewels that had been stolen from a Portuguese ship of like nobility who were trying to get away from Portugal. So there were all these Portuguese jewels and special stuff, and the nobility was killed. Raider then attacked that ship, got all of the stolen jewels, and then he sold it all off. He had kept a box, and on the box, this like jewel casket, is a deer and an apple. Boom. Okay, wonder what that means. And we're going to read this little thing. Somehow Rosie's locket and the jewel cask were connected. They had to be, and he had a suspicion of how. And if that suspicion proved to be the truth, he had damaged her life in yet one more way. I'm glad that I reread this book yesterday and re-recorded all of this, I misread this the first time, and I thought he had taken over the Portuguese ship and killed everyone on it. And when we're going to keep going, and you're going to realize those two things are very, very different. We are now getting to the craziest part of the book. Right here, Jean is about to make a choice. Jean is about to make a choice, and I think I should just read it to you. I'm just going to have y'all just tell me how you feel. So they get to England, and Rosie has a British accent. I'm suspicious on how good it is. I feel like if her father was a sailor and then she was around all these ruffians on like the where she grew up, I just don't think they had normal British accents. But the plan, they're like, okay, Raider has an American accent. So, we're just gonna go. So a carriage is approaching. They're about to meet their Brit. Here we go. She looked up at his face and was aghast at the change that had come over it. His eyes were unfocused and his mouth hung slightly open, a growing accumulation of moisture gathering in the corner. It had been her idea that he was to be simple and mute for his own protection, but he now looked far more authentic than she imagined was possible, and it frightened her. Gone was the bright gleam of intelligence from his eyes, the angled cut of his facial bones. They had been replaced by a blurred softness, a blankness that made him look like someone she'd never seen before. This is a choice. This is a choice. But then, as I was writing this, I was reminded I, for some reason, have this fear, this actual fear of a Brit hearing my American accent. The first time I was there as a small child at 13, I did what I thought was a British accent. Pastor I grew up going to church, to his church, was South African. I apparently was doing a flawless South African accent. When I was in England, I was asked if I was South African. I cannot do it anymore. It's a very hard accent. The second time I was there was in college, and I was attending this lecture series for funsies, and this brilliant professor, I promise I have a point, this brilliant lecture series on how it's really important to pay attention to the historical context of when each play was written and was being performed. So we get to the end of the lecture series, and the professor thanks us for attending all of these lectures. And she said, "Oh, and you're all here for help on writing your thesis, right?" And I have not said anything the whole series. There's only like 8 of us that have been attending, and I just shake my head. I'm like, "No," because I had been going for fun. She goes, "Oh," like lights up, like, "Oh, okay. Why have you been attending?" And my deep fear, my social anxiety of being found out for being American, I just close my mouth and I just stare. I'm terrified. I cannot make words. I stare at her for like 30 seconds. It gets uncomfortable. And then she's eventually like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you all for coming." Like, I don't even know what like any of them were thinking of why I was there. I sprint out of the classroom, and maybe they don't remember, but maybe they're like, "Yeah, there was this creepy non-talking girl who just stared at us and we don't know why she was there." This choice that Jean makes is interesting, but weirdly I can relate to it because I I too have not talked in England because I was afraid of people hearing my accent. I I don't know why. It's it's just a thing. I've worked through it. But yeah, weirdly, Raider and I have the same experience. So they come into the village, they're picked up by a carriage, they're taken to Pharaoh, and they like take the carriage, and she's like, "This is my groom. This is like my or no, this is like my guy, my helper man. And everyone's like, oh, he's so handsome. Too bad. Too bad. He's there's nothing in going on. There's no, oh well, he's so handsome. There's only one bed at the inn. And Jean makes him go to the stables, which is sad. And as she's going up the stairs, that's it. That's the end of book 2. Once again, my theory that this was all just supposed to be one book. I think even a book that wasn't supposed to be in the American Dream series, because we've yet to go to America. We do eventually. And I think that was always in the ending. I'm just curious, but we'll never know. We'll never know, will we? But when you love vintage, you will buy evening gowns and keep them in your closet and be like, oh, why do I buy these evening gowns? Let me show you the book cover. It's pretty good. Like the cut, I'm pretty pleased. All right, team, let's do it. So I reread the whole thing, most of it. I read 16 pages last night, and then I read the rest of it this morning. So it's pretty fresh, which is great. I think this is a really fun finale to this book, especially after the second read. I think I'm recommending this. I think it's fun. I don't know. There aren't many words on the page. I think I'm doing a pretty good job covering all of it. So maybe you don't need to, and you have to hunt down 3 books. I think it's pretty fun. I also think it's quite romantic. Once again, maybe I'm crazy and I'm just a big fan of Jean. So we're going to open at the inn. Literally, she was going up the stairs. Now she is coming down the stairs. All of the men are like, ooh, pretty lady, at breakfast, and they're all eating their oatmeal. And she's like, everyone was looking at me except for Raider because he must hate me. No, no, Rosie, you had a weird plan. You have a weird plan. And conveniently, Raider is an Oscar-winning actor, and Raider knows he's gonna keep eating his oatmeal. Oh, I forgot something. Her aunt is dead. That might have been a reveal at the end of book 2, but we're back. We're back. Her aunt is dead. She just died a fortnight ago. And they're like, oh my gosh, she's dead. She was single and she was lonely, but she was the best. She was the best. She had just finished sewing a wedding gown and then she promptly died. Sad. Everyone in the community really liked her. Now that I'm wearing an evening gown, I feel like I can reveal that to y'all. Rosie's like, I have to go, I guess, claim her possessions. Everyone is very trusting of the fact that this just is her aunt because she owned land. And I don't think a lot of worldly possessions, but everyone is just totally down to give them to her. She goes to like the police officer and she's like, police officer, I heard you have a trunk of my aunt's things. Can you give them to me, please? And police officer's like, yeah, sure. So she digs through the trunk and she finds a Bible. She finds some clothes. I don't think like just a ton of super interesting things, but then there's a box. Now, you forgot. You forgot that there is a key. And I didn't forget that there's a key in her locket that we thought there was no use for. Oh, this is American Dreams. Anything that is mentioned has a reason because they're pretty short. So she has the key and she's like, oh my gosh. She uses the key and the key opens up. And what is it? Another Bible. Good. He's like, I've got to be alone. And he's like, totally, totally. She goes back up to her bedroom. She's like, it's just another Bible, but it was in a box that my key could open. No point. So she's flipping through the Bible and then a letter comes out because of course it does. The mom is like, hey, I was a little foolish running off with your dad, but I would not trade any of my riches for you. You are my greatest treasure. I am so sorry. But I was a countess and I chose to give it all up for your father. And I would do it again. And I really love you, which is sweet. But also, like, Jean, plot twist. Rosie remembers that whenever her parents were talking, her dad would refer to her mom as the Countess, which is kind of a weird nickname, I have to say. For like 5 pages, she does think about being a countess quite a bit. And she's like, oh, I must walk down the stairs very elegantly as a countess. And she gets over that pretty fast. She doesn't think about being a countess after a few hours, which I appreciate. I didn't, it's fine. And now she takes Raider aside and he gives such a good reaction to this. She's like, hey, I know this sounds stupid, but I think I'm a Portuguese countess. And Raider's like, yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. When, boys, when a girl tells you she thinks she might be nobility, you just say yes. You're just like, yeah, yep. You carry yourself so beautifully. I assumed you were a countess. I'm not surprised. You're surprised. I'm not surprised. But then he reveals to her. He reveals what I thought in the last read. I killed your whole family, which was shocking. No, second read this morning, I realized he had sold off all of the jewels of her family. And he's just like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst. I'm so sorry I sold off all the jewels, which honestly, I just don't think is that bad. He got all the jewels. He's a pirate. Of course he's going to sell them off. You're not going to keep them because at that time, Rosie was like 11 or something, like 9. She was a baby, and I think it's completely fine. He sold off the jewels, but of course, Raider has to make everything even. And he's like, I wronged you. I have to make this even. And even Rosie's like, not really. I'm fine. And then he's like, you're not going to be safe here. I'm not going to leave you here. You have no aunt. I don't feel okay with that. I'm taking you back to New Orleans because you can't stay here. And she's like, no, I'll just keep doing my aunt's sewing business. I'm gonna keep doing that. But eventually she comes around to it. They sell off the land and like she ends up like taking care of a lot of the planning. And I think Raider really likes that. I think he's like, kind of like that you're taking over all the planning. Then that night they go to a beach where it's pre-decided that Raider was gonna be picked up by Nicodemus McMayer to go back to America. Rosie comes with them. Raider had found a secret cave for them to hide in that normally it was a thief cave. And even on the second read, I'm not really sure why Rosie just gets so distraught about going down this hill. She's like, you left me. I didn't know where you were. I had to go down this hill. It was normally, I will almost always defend a girl being a little silly. And just like sensitive. I will always be team girl. I even on the second read, I was a little confused. He's like, let me comfort you. And this is once again kind of like are we surprised romantic moment. Things are getting hot and heavy. And this is a time where Rosie is like, I really want to do this. And then we get this like consent talk from Raider. Like, and on the second read, I was like, am I biased or is this kind of beautiful? Okay, I understand this is cringy to read out loud. However, I think this is such a sweet conversation that they're having. I really do think this book will make people Team Raider. They're in the cave and we're having a very typical conversation between two people in a historical romance where it's like, no, we shouldn't be together. We shouldn't do this. Sorry, you're going to hear this. Resting her forehead on his chin, she asked, "Why are we doing this?" They've been kissing. And he tipped her face to him with his forefinger. "Don't you like it?" His eyes picked up the gold from the fire. She lowered her thick lashes. "I do, but I know I shouldn't." "Why shouldn't you?" "I like it," he said, smiling softly. "If you like it too," he shrugged. "Why not?" He pulled her head into his shoulder and rested his chin on her hair. "Nettle, do you understand how people get to know each other?" She made a non-committal movement against him. She didn't know what he was trying to tell her. And then he says, "They begin with sight. They look at each other and decide if they like what they see." She remembered the first time she had seen him. Unquestionably, she had liked what she had seen. Then, he went on, they hear, they listen. What does this other person have to say? I like that. They watch the other's actions. Does she behave bravely, kindly, intelligently? Then by touch. Perhaps we shake hands or something more. His voice had a soft, wicked note in it. Haven't you known people so repugnant to you they couldn't bear the thought of touching them? Charles Lawrence came immediately to Rosie's mind. If you like the way they look and behave and what they have to say, and you aren't repelled at the idea of touching them, then sometimes, especially if they're members of the opposite sex, you want to touch them some more. You can't tell me you don't know what that feels like. And then he says, once you know you like touching each other, little awkward. The other senses become more important. Taste and smell. We already know she thinks he smells great. It's come up a lot of times. And then he is like, "Yes, you smell like no other girl in the world." And then he's like, "Taste." And then they like they've been kissing and stuff. And I know that that's such a dorky conversation. I understand that. It doesn't feel exactly boy. It feels very much like Jean giving a sex talk, but like a very gentle one you can have with a teenager or like a younger person. I'm really glad I reread this. I don't know. I think it's interesting. Is it a little cringy? Sure. But this talk was always going to be cringy, boys and girls. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great little section she put in. Once again, plain song for Caitlin could never. She's like, "Yeah, I do like how you smell, and I, I like that stuff." And then things progress and it's going great. But then the burglars from the burglar cave come in. Once again, we are reminded Rosie's got a gun and she is not afraid to use it. All right, Rosie. She's just gonna fire it. And then so it gets dangerous. And then who comes in? One of our faves, Nicodemus McNair. He comes in, he's very big and scary. She gives him a big hug, and it's very sweet because Nicodemus like never questions her on like why she's coming back. He doesn't guilt her, he's not nosy. Obviously, she's not ready to talk about it. And Nicodemus McNair is like, "Hey, you're not ready to talk about it, and that's okay." Now, we are about to get a really big shift in Raider. He becomes crazy and skinny. They're traveling back to America, to New Orleans, and he is just like, "We're out of water. Our sails are banged up. I don't care. We're getting to America." His crew are like, "Please, can we stop at the cove to like refresh the ships and the sails and stuff?" And he's like, "No, I am crazy and I am skinny." But eventually, Nicodemus McNair makes him stop, and they go to the cove. And then Frank brings a letter to Rosie, and it's obviously Raider, and he's like, "Meet me in the library." And she goes, "No." Like, "Tell him I won't." "Do you want me to tell him why you won't?" "No, I'm not going." Immediately it's like, "And who is it?" "It's Raider." And Raider is like, "I have finally thought of a way to repay for ruining your life. We should get married." And she's like, no, because deep down she's like, oh my gosh, I don't want him to get married to me because he feels bad for me. I'm gonna be like stuck in this like lovelet, like like no, I want like my chickens and I want my orphans. But then she actually says something like very truthful, and I think it shows that so much growth has happened for Rosie from like the beginning of the series. Here we go. So she's like, once again, why are you doing this to me? All right. So Raider says, I want you to be safe and to have all the things you need. Okay. So much growth. Here we go. Don't you know what I really need? What everyone really needs? She cried, almost pleading. Not some kind of obsessive retribution. People need love and work to do that pleases them, friends and pleasure. I don't want to be merely a balance on a scale to the man I marry. And then it says, for the idea of marriage was no longer anathema to her. I don't know that word. She had a new understanding of the desire to spend a lifetime with one man, to have him father her children, share her trials, laugh with her. I want to be loved for myself. She might as well have been talking to a wall. He looked at her with intense, burning eyes that seemed uncomprehending. For a moment, she wondered if he was feverish. And then he's like, you have to marry me. I must know you are protected, blah, blah, blah. Then he makes a really good point. And he's like, you know about my reputation, right? Everyone, when we land, is going to know about you and that you were on a boat with me. And people are going to make a lot of assumptions about you. So and he mentions, like, if you won't marry me, I'm going to leave you on the island. But if I leave you on the island, because I know that's where you'll be safe from Lawrence, I don't know why he thinks Lawrence can never find this place, but I guess it's just canon that he can't. She's like, no, I'm going to go to New Orleans and I'm going to sew and have chickens. So he's like, I can't bring you back if you're not my wife because then everyone's going to make assumptions about you. But don't worry, it's just a marriage of convenience. And she's like, yes, I will do it. You just have to know it's only a marriage of convenience. Like, it's just you like doing this thing where everything has to be fair again. And she does ask Nicodemus, like, what do you think? And we love Nicodemus. And he says something really sad. Nicodemus McNair. Oh, oh. And then she's like, well, what about Octavia? What about Octavia? And Raider's like, what about Octavia? Oh, she doesn't want to marry me. And Rosie's like, Nicodemus McNair, she's like, do you think I should do it? And he says, I cannot tell you what to do. I did not know. He's like Scottish, by the way. I know the dangers of connections, but only because once I knew their joys. Nicodemus McNair. That's so sad. So anyway, she agrees to do it. I'm including this. I either told y'all this already or I forgot, but Nicodemus McNair and Raider know each other because Nicodemus McNair was kidnapped by Lawrence. Then when that ship attacked Raider and Twin ship, and like Rip was stolen. Raider is left for dead. Nicodemus McNair had like been like, I'm escaping, and he like attacked Lawrence. They were left on the ship for dead. And Nicodemus McNair, before he was impressed, had been a minister. And when he was like impressed, he was stolen from his family. And eventually he finds out that his whole family died of starvation and like diseases and stuff because like they didn't have any food. It was really, really sad. So poor Nicodemus McNair. He's still a minister, so he can actually legally marry them. So they go to the library and there's candles and it's really a bummer. And Raider looks just insane and he looks skinny and he like drinks a lot. And they get married and she's really sad. And then they get on the boat and we get to New Orleans pretty dang fast. And then Nicodemus McNair sends a sailor, even though he's not supposed to. We are about to meet a trope that I really love, which is a buxom woman with red hair. When a book says that a buxom woman has red hair, you know she's a treat. She's gonna be fun. She's immediately like, I'm Reader's mother. I love you. You are so freaking cute. I can already tell I'm obsessed with you. I like to wear crazy clothes and I'm really bossy and rich and I have a lot of animals. And I'm like, yes. And I think it's such a good sign in these books where a man has a mother who's very eccentric and crazy. And he's like woken up and he's like, oh my gosh, mom, and she's like, I'm throwing a big bridal wedding party for you guys. You show up to the house. I love your wife already. I'm obsessed with her. I'm taking her back to the house. And Rosie's like, oh my gosh, I thought they were all going to be like really stuffy. So we already know that they're a blast. She gets ready for the party. She's going down the stairs. Can you tell I just read this? She's going down the stairs. She meets her dad's, well, I guess her new father in law. And he's like, I just do whatever my wife tells me to do. And I'm like, I love this family. This family's great. Rosie's having the same reaction. She's like, man, I'm really, really love this family. I know I'm really going to miss them. So she comes down to the stairs, and Raider immediately comes to her side. And he doesn't look as like, he's still skinny, but he doesn't look as like he doesn't look as like crazy anymore. He looks a little bit more normal, which is good. And he takes her around. And then we get to a point that I almost, for the first time in forever, I don't even remember the last time I had this reaction where I almost threw my book across the room. So, guess who's at the party? Batiste is at the party, and Octavia is at the party. Raider, with his hand beneath Rosie's elbow, said, Rosie, I'd like you to meet my sister, Octavia, and her husband, Batiste. Okay, I think if I was a child reading this, I would be like, it's can only like one person, one girl. So obviously, like I knew that something was going on, but his sister, I guess I'm just too 2025 where I'm like, yeah, you can like multiple people. It's 2025. Well, it's not 2025. It's 1814. And we're in American Dreams, and boys can only like one person. Well, honestly, though, Plain Song for Caitlin, kind of confusing for me. Well, I guess it's more like you can only have one true love. Raider is like, well, I did it for Octavia's safety because you saw what happened when Lawrence found out that I cared about you. And so I did this to protect Octavia. I think that's a stupid plan. I don't think it makes sense. Once again, this is American Dreams, and so we're just going to have to accept that. So then, one thing I love about Jean is she's more about the ride. She's more about the journey. She's more about the yearning. And the boys and the girls, she just kind of throws plot in. And I think this is a great example of this. And I have to say, when I was adapting, I mean, if you know Jean Ferris, you know what I spent an ungodly amount of time for adapting for no reason. There's a princess, and at one point she's like, the spell is broken. And the boy is like, how did the spell break? And I spent so much time trying to figure out how to write that in. I was like, oh, how did the spell break? How did the spell break? Because in it, it just says, yes, she explained to him how it happened and how it came to be. And she was like, done. And that's just Jean. Jean's just in it for the vibes. And I then realized, I was like, oh, wait, if Jean's not going to explain this, I don't have to explain this. So I don't explain it either, which is I appreciate. I think it's more about the vibes, and I think if, the author doesn't explain something, you don't need to twist yourself into knots. As a 4th grader, I didn't care how the spell was broken. I didn't, and she knew the audience. She knew we didn't care. She knows we wanted them to kiss. Oh, Jean Lafitte is there too. So now the dad, John Lyons, which I forgot to mention there, or maybe it's Lions. I realized this today. Their business is called the Lion Share, but it's Lyons. which I think is very, very funny. The dad stands up and is like, we're so happy. Everyone gets to come together. We love Raider's new wife. We go, happiness, happiness. And then the dad says, my only regret is that Rip isn't here to drink this toast with us, but with God's help, we'll have him back before next Christmas. To Rosie and Raider. And Rosie gets really upset because she's like, why did y'all need to keep so many secrets from me? Why? It's like, why are you trying to protect me? And you have to say, like, this family loves a secret. So anyways, she goes upstairs, understandably hurt. Tootie comes up after her. Tootie is there. Turns out she was like the nursemaid for this family the whole time. And she's like, what's up? And Rosie's like, it's all sham. It's a sham marriage. And he doesn't really love me. And he won't even talk to me about secrets. That's really good. Tootie is like, you need to talk to him about this. And she's like, no. And Tootie's like, no, I'm going to go grab him. So Raider comes up and is like, what's up? What's up? And she's like, this is a sham. Why didn't you tell me stuff? And after this is all over, after you get your brother, like, I'm like, whatever, getting the marriage annulled. And Raider's like, fair. That's fair. And you can do what you want. So we get this part and he says, I saw you come into the drawing room on my father's arm. I finally understood what I had been trying to do without letting myself know why. I'd been trying to get you into this house, into this family, into my life without admitting I love you. I think this is very domestic and sweet, kind of this I love you declaration after this like pirate thing. You know, I think it's very cute. I think it's a nice declaration of love. At first, she's like a little mad, and then he can tell she's not that mad. And then she's like, well, you're going to go find your brother tomorrow. So I guess we just have tonight. And then he like starts crying. I love that. He starts crying because he's like, really? Like, I really thought what I had done was inexcusable. So I really thought like that was going to be like the end of everything. And she's like, no, it's not. Okay, we're getting back to my favorite kind of stuff, which is the cringy stuff. So they have sex. We have that, like, of course, fade to black. This is a historical romance for teens. But once again, Jean is gonna kind of test the envelope. She really is. So after all of it, he checks in and she's crying a little bit and she's feeling a little insecure because we all know Raider famously is kind of a and she's like, I'm feeling insecure right now. I've never done that before. And I don't know, like, and was I like living up to every other person you've ever slept with? I'm feeling a little insecure right now. I like the scene that Jean put it in because I think she knows this is a book for teen girls, and a lot of girls are introduced to, I don't know, romance through the books that they read and the movies that they watched. And I think she took that seriously. And I mean, it's a pirate book. I wouldn't say realistic, but I love that she wanted to put in a scene where it's like they fall into each other's arms, but then afterwards, she's kind of feeling emotional. She's feeling vulnerable. And he checks in, he notices. He communicates with her, he affirms her feelings, why she's feeling that way, but then also lets her know he's like vulnerable with her and saying like this is the first time he slept with someone he cares about like this. So this in a way is new to him as well, and he's very vulnerable. And then he's like, "Hey, I noticed you didn't eat anything at dinner. Are you hungry? Should I go get you some food?" And she's like, "Yeah." Mhm. And so he goes down and he's thinking to himself, he's like, why did I try to escape love? Why did I do this? I feel so alive now, which is fine. The next day comes. Raider's got to go rescue his brother. All the men are getting ready to go. And then he like thinks to himself, he's like, okay, I have to stay like cold hearted. I've got to go back out and save my brother. I've got to kind of like forget about Rosie, and not let that like love and wanting to return to her in one piece, like keep me from doing a good job of making things even and rescuing my brother. So he like says goodbye to her. That's probably also why she was crying a little bit. And then Octavia comes up and she's like, this is stupid. Put on some pants. So they put on pants and Rosie is she goes and Raider like sees her and she's like, are you mad? He's like, no, I'm not mad. Then it says, however much he wanted to, he couldn't resist her. He learned a new lesson then, that he would have to accept the fact that already she was too much a part of him for him ever again to shut her out of his mind. The lightning conveniently immediately shows up. It's flying the flag of like, we we like we've mutinied. We've mutinied. Which famously, I don't think they should have taken that seriously. They have no choice. Raider's dad is like, I'm going over no matter what. You guys don't have to come, but I'm going. Raider then follows him. Yeah, it turns out they actually had mutinied. Lawrence is locked up somewhere. And Raider's like, how do I know though that I can trust you guys? And then really skinny, dirty man with a long beard and long hair is like, Raider, you can believe it. Raider cries, his dad cries, I think Rip cries. They're all reunited. And Rip's like, oh my gosh, you guys got married. And then we get a very Jean sentence. Raider says, what an anticlimax after so long to have my revenge subverted so simply. That's Jean for you. She's just gonna wrap things up. And then I think she remembered, like, oh, I'm writing American Dreams. We have to do the Battle of New Orleans. I have no problem with her section about the Battle of New Orleans because I think she knows we didn't really want to read about the Battle of New Orleans. She tells us it happened, which is great. All the boys for 17 days goes and fights the Battle of New Orleans, which is nice. And like at the end of the chapter, it's like they beat them, but also there was like blood and Rip and Raider's eyes, and you're like, is it all going to work out? And immediately we jump cut to a big party celebrating the end of the battle and that they won. And then there's kind of like, oh, yay, General Jackson. And you're like, I think Raider obviously has very much softened. I think I'm always kind of having to defend myself of like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm biased. But I think he's softened in a way I believe, I guess. But yeah, I think the change in Raider is earned. I believe it. He like goes back to normal. He has an eye patch and so does his twin. And yeah, I think it kind of comes to, as Raider said, a little bit of an anticlimax, but I think it's not about the end, it's about the journey. It's an ending that everyone saw coming. Once again, I'm really going to fight for the fact that I think this was one big book that possibly wasn't supposed to be a part of this series. Jean, get that bag. I'm not like missing anything that I want to say. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Please be nice. I am always going to be a little on edge that I said something wrong. But this is American history, so I wanted to be like respectful of all of that. Sure that there definitely are things that it was written in the 90s. I'm sure Jean would have written some of these details a little differently. I think y'all can understand why this series meant a lot to me. If you have watched this far, thank you. If you want to like and subscribe and comment and send to a friend, please do. I had a lot of fun. I already have a notes app list of things I would like to do next because I really enjoyed myself. Thank you guys. I already love you if you watched this far. I keep prolonging the ending because I'm afraid I'm forgetting something to say, but I really don't know if I have. But yeah. All right. Love you.